actually talking to Casey. Casey just won the Northeast Regional Kayak Bass Tournament on what lake was it again? Lake was it Lake Erie?
Lake Erie.
Lake Erie.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
we were talking to him about his win, and he's kind of the top dog in this area. I like to say he beats me all the time, anyways, in the kayaking series. So
What part of Lake Erie did it happen on?
It was Presque Isle Bay. We fished
Awesome.
out of Erie, Pennsylvania. So, and
It's one of my favorite places on the face of the earth.
it's a pretty awesome place. I've really enjoyed it the past 2 years I've been there. So,
well, Edwin, let's dive in, man. We got you on, and I want to dive into your phenomenal year. It's a historical year in the bass fishing industry, with the split with Bass Pro Tour and all that, and I mean you sealed the deal big time with winning the Red Crest and AOI. I mean you can't get it just doesn't get any better than that, you know. So let's kind of talk about your season at first and how things have changed now from like fishing the Elite Series to now, and I know your practices have to change, but did much change your mentality wise going into an event? Did much change on that, or did you just kind of go in knowing that you got to win it? You just try to win each event, or
Well, for me, on the mentality side of it, I just was super excited to go fishing again, especially after the first event. I was kind of burnt out where I was and everything that was going on. I don't know how to describe it, without getting into too many details. I was so excited for the year, so nervous about it because there'd never been 80 guys put together with those credentials ever to compete against each other. We had the best guys in the industry, minus a couple um, put together that's just phenomenal. So super nervous about the year, just you know competing against that stiff a competition, and to be sitting here doing this interview with you guys right now means I had a pretty good year, and I got to pinch myself, make sure I'm not dreaming because it was quite a year, and super thankful for it.
now was there anything that you look back at this year and be like you wished you would have done different? I mean, I know that you won AOI, so no, naturally you go like no because it could have changed the outcome. But was there any events that you look back that you wished was kind of went a little bit different?
Super frustrated at Winnebago. I had fished Winnebago quite a bit, and I went back prior to that event and I looked up the social media post I put up on Facebook the last time I was there, or one of the last times I was there, and I said, man, it was the absolute best day I'd ever had in my career on Winnebago, and it was the exact same time frame that we went there this year. So I was just hard headed as could be that I was going to catch them that way that I caught them, 2, 3 years prior out on that offshore structure. Because I'm telling you, I caught hundreds of 3 to 5 pounders, both smallmouth and largemouth, and I never fished shallow with the exception of the tournament in practice, and never went in them backwaters or them canals because in my mind I knew what lived out there offshore because I'd been there and done it before. So yeah, I'd love to have that event over. I wish I'd never been to that body of water because I would have not got bit out there in the first 15 minutes and would have gone to the bank. But um, it was a great year, a fun year. I kind of frustrating we didn't get to go to Grand, but with the flooding, we never could have got on it. I mean, it was just we had to go to Table Rock, 2 events in a row with our hands being tied and everybody's travel already to that part of the country. But no, I wouldn't change anything. I actually, like, I guess, I'd love to go back and do Winnebago again and take some of that stress off of sitting on the sidelines watching it unfold. I'd like to have been in control of the outcome. But all in all, the first half of the season was good enough to propel me through the final side of that season.
Yeah. Now, kind of going into your practices for these events, do you practice any different for these events than you did, let's say, for the Elite Series? Elite Series, you were looking for those five big fish, but here you still need big ones, but you also need those ones that you can kind of get a bite everywhere you go, kind of deal. Did you change much on your practice?
You got to find lots of fish. In the past, five big fish you're done after you caught those 5 fish, and then everybody passes you on that score tracker. So in the Bass Pro Tour and the Major League Fishing format, you've got to find lots of fish, just as big ones, little ones, all of them in between. You got to figure out the lake better than I've ever figured it out in the past. You know, in the past, you could survive those 5 fish events just junk fishing. No better way to describe it, just junk fishing. Go and catch one deep, catch one off a dock, go catch one off a laydown, then catch one off riprap. At the end of the day, get 6 decent bites, catch 5 of them, and you come in looking like a hero. In the Bass Pro Tour and Major League Fishing format, you can't do it. I mean, that format exposes those junk fishing events that I was able to survive in the past. You've got to catch them basically from the start to the finish, or you're going to get passed like you're sitting still.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's what's fun to watch it on TV, because I don't get a lot of work done on those weeks when there's a Major League Fishing event going on, because I mean, you stay so intrigued with it, like somebody's always catching something. It amazes me how many fish you guys catch through the day. Just like a vacuum cleaner going down the bank, and you're just like, good Lord Almighty! Somebody's always putting a fish on the board. It looks like every couple minutes.
And it's really cool to see the bursts that they go in. Somebody's catching, they'll go on a spot or on a bank and catch like 10, 15 in a row, and then it'll kind of die down, and then somebody else will start, getting on them, and the leaderboard changes are pretty awesome. And the time in between, the time in between the periods, like stuff always seems to change, and somebody can be wearing them out and be in the lead, and then after that period, not really be catching them anymore. So it's awesome to watch. I do enjoy it.
Yeah, and a lot of people, it's stressful. Yeah,
I can imagine.
And going into this, a lot of people was like, man, this is gonna be a dink fest. It's not gonna be no big fish and blah blah blah. And I don't mind watching, like when the Elite Series caught big fish. I didn't mind watching those events, but to me, it's more like unrealistic for most of us when we go to that body of water. You know what I mean? You're not going to me and you ain't going to go to Texas and catch 100 pounds just like that. You know what I mean? So, it kind of brings you back down to like, I call it grassroots fishing. That's what it looks like. You guys you're junk fishing, and you're just trying to throw something together real quick and hoping to run on a pattern. But I noticed on some of the guys that really killed it in FLW and Elite, some of them are kind of struggling a little bit this year, it just seems like I don't know if they're so used to catching those big fish and they're practicing. Maybe they didn't change their practicing much up with the Bass Pro Tour. But, I mean, what do you think that is? Or just kind of how the year's going for them?
Everybody sits there and points their finger at Kevin Van Dam and those guys. But, Kevin was dealing with a lot of stuff, I'm sure, behind the scenes and business stuff. Yeah, I would never poke those bears.
No.
They're gonna be back with a vengeance. Every time he's had a bad year, he comes back, great. I just, there's a lot of change into it, and you have to bring the energy literally from the start to the finish in that event. It's probably one of the most exasperating, tiring days of my career fishing those events than I've ever experienced before, because there's no downtime. And if you think about it, in the old format, reeling in a pound and a half fish when you've already got 13, 14, 15 pounds in the live well, you could care less in that 20 seconds that you're reeling that fish in, whether it got on, got off, hit the carpet, whatever. That fish goes to the bottom line and counts just as much as any other fish. So there's never a time that you just take a deep breath and rest, whether it be for 20 seconds, a minute, or a couple hours. The entire day is magnified. And, I just think those guys will pick up the intensity level, and you'll see it. It's going to be that much harder next year to succeed.
Yeah, especially once they've kind of got everything off the ground now. This is the first good year for them. I see next year being even better, more planning time and all that. So, but let's kind of get into the last event there and talk about your practice. How did your practice go for you in that event?
It went good. I had really just thinking about that event leading up to it. I felt like the best opportunity to make it through the rounds was to fish that Black River area. Just from my experience in the past of when we've been there, I've always noticed that that's got the most fish in it. Big and little and everything in between. And I spent my first day in there, and like 10 o'clock, everything started clicking. I started catching them on a frit side. It's a shallow running flat sided crankbait, and I was catching two at a time when I'd find them, and they were just relating to little points and shell beds. And I spent the second day kind of looking around a little bit more for some of that stuff, down where I've always historically fished in the past, but didn't find it. And it's kind of weird, in practice, I caught probably 70 to 80% smallmouth and big ones, like had some 4.5, close to 5 pounders in practice. And in the tournament, I weighed one smallmouth the entire week. It was just crazy how the light switch went off from smallmouth to largemouth on the exact same spots. But, I think the current really kind of slowed down, or I did end up catching some smallmouth off that one wing dam. But for the most part, I really thought I was going to catch a lot more smallmouth than I did. But a fun event. Mississippi River is amazing for people that had never been up there. It's just chock full of bass.
Yeah, it's. I got a couple of guys I've talked to that's been up here and fishing. And they're like, that's one of the places that it should be on your bucket list. Like it's just an awesome fishery.
Yeah, it is. It's just when you have 5 pound smallmouth and 4 pound largemouth all mixed in within sometimes a few feet of each other in the current, and it's just a cool fishery.
So let's kind of go into. Everybody knows how it played out through the day on the first couple of days, but kind of going into your last day. Tell us about that. How your day went, and did you have any spots during the day that were just kind of it died for you for a little bit?
In the previous events that we've always had there, I've always fished pool 7, but the first 3 rounds was all in pool 8. So we weren't allowed to practice pool 7. We could ride around and look at it, but I really wanted to get to pool 7. And kind of interesting, I worked really hard that second day of the tournament to make the knockout round. I wanted to fish Friday, and how they had it broke up in the bracket, depending on where you finished, determined if you fished Friday or Saturday of the knockout round, because they cut it to 10 anglers and 10 anglers to fish Friday, 10 Friday, 10 Saturday, and the top 5 out of each. And man, I'd shake 4 fish off, and then I'd catch one to stay in that range right where I wanted to stay. And I thought it was going to be super easy the next day in the knockout round, and I struggled big time. Ended up catching a fish in the last 90 seconds to pass Stephen Browning. It was the hardest 90 seconds of my life. Back to your question there of pool 7. So we got to ride around, look at it, and in the past, I always had a backwater there that I felt like I should have won. I had big fish out of it numerous times. The last event we had there, I caught a 5-6 out of it. A really big fish for that fishery that far north. And I was like, man, I'm gonna go all in. I'm gonna go in there and try to catch those big ones that I've never caught little ones in there in my life. And I get in there and I start catching them right off the bat, and I catch fish all day long. And I made one complete lap around this lake, and when I first pulled into it, they were schooling out in front of my boat. I had to get over 2 different beaver dams to get in there, and caught them. And then Greg Hackney got really close when I got to the back end of that lake, and I started fishing back the other side, and kind of kept my lead, to 5 to 7 pounds. And then I could see up in front of me, they were schooling. And I pulled up there, and for 40 minutes, I caught them almost every cast. I think at one time I caught 23 bass in 22 minutes. And it was a lot of fun. It was so fast and furious that the score official, he couldn't keep up with them. All he had time to do was ride them down, and they all hit the score tracker at one time. And at one point, my arms cramping up trying to reel them in, and I'd never been excited for having a fish landing violation in my life. That's one of those fish hit the carpet. We have those to try to protect the fish and the slime coat to keep people from, just unnecessarily letting them hit the carpet in that hot weather. And it happened to me, and had a 2-minute break, and I was like, man, I needed it bad. But it was a fun day, one that we all dream of, as all of us on this on this call right now as kids, to have a day like that on the championship day when you have $300,000 on the line.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I saw didn't one of the scale like overheated or something? You broke the scale. You're weighing so many fish.
Yeah, I could have weighed one more, but I ended up letting that fish go.
Yeah, I saw you were just like, you get that scale working, and just threw that fish back in the water. It's like, I got enough right here.
I wanted to keep them biting.
Oh yeah.
When you got biting like that, you got to get bait back in there as quick as possible. I just didn't want them to disperse on me.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's great. That's confidence too. No, did you know you're gonna keep catching when you just put one back? Like,
about confidence or stupidity. It's one of the two.
Yeah, I think I walked away from watching it live, and then I come back 20 minutes later, and you were up like 40 pounds. I was like, what in the heck just happened? That was pretty freaking amazing there.
And I bet you some of the other guys that were following it, when they get the score tracker update, and you're like, what in the world? Like, I bet you their jaws are dropped.
I'd be hoping it was a malfunction,
Yeah.
But it's pretty amazing. Now let's talk about you won the AOI. It's the first AOI. I mean, that's something that'll never be taken away. You're the first Red Crest winner, the first AOI. I mean, talk about how important that is now. Like, you're the first in this new tour series. How important that is.
I don't know about important, but I'm just thankful that it happened, and thankful that I had a good year, and thankful for the league. Just a place to fish, because I'm excited about the future of the league, and just super glad that I got an invitation to be part of it.
Yeah, it's definitely a good league. It's definitely interesting to watch, and like I say, it's never a dull moment with it. But Edwin, we always do a segment where we go in depth, and right now we're at that time of the year where the fish are transitioning. They're getting ready to start moving in those creeks, and we're going to get James and turn it over to him and kind of do our in-depth segment on late summertime bass fishing.
Okay.
I just, going from, like a springtime cold front and a fall time cold front, which one of those do you think affects the fish more?
Spring versus, I definitely spring. In the fall, and I'll be honest with you guys. I always think that, and I hate to say I'll be honest, but my thinking on it is, in my mind and how I view cold fronts, whether it be spring or fall, it affects me as a fisherman 10 times more, maybe 100 times more than it affects those fish. And if you really think about it, when we're measuring the surface temperature of the water on that Lowrance locator, it's maybe 6 inches, 8 inches under the water, a foot underneath the water. It takes a few days for that temperature to adjust. But in the spring and the fall, the depth of fish that we're catching, they're going to be 2-3 foot down, maybe 6 foot, maybe 10 foot, maybe 15 foot, depending on the water clarity. Those cold fronts affect us. They affect me because I'm cold. I'm out in the elements. That bass down there at 10 foot has no effect on it at all. Now, if we want to talk about the barometric pressure or sunlight or some of those things, that affects those fish. But that temperature change, no, it doesn't, especially anything deeper than a foot, because you got to have wind blowing like 30 miles an hour and multiple days in a row, big waves crashing on that lake, rolling those waves to get that temperature to be adjusted multiple feet in that lake. So those first few fronts, especially in the spring, especially in the fall, the first fronts, really has no effect on those fish. It affects us as fishermen. We get cold, we get hot, whatever it may be. It doesn't affect those fish, guys. I'm just sorry, it doesn't. Maybe the water falling like in level or rising, that affects the fish, but not the temperature.
Right on. Um, just say you went to a brand new body of water that you never went to before, and you want to break it down. Where would you start at this time of the year?
Great question. I think what affects fish this time of the year is the amount of sunlight. I know growing up and learning how to bass fish, I was always confident in shallow water, laydowns, the backs of creeks. And man, you could mark your calendar September 1st, the water temperature hadn't dropped, the days hadn't got any cooler, but there'd be fish moving in the backs of those creeks. And if you were the first guy to go back there and exploit those fish, man, you'd have a good tournament. So, in my mind, the shorter days, the shorter sunlight, that's what affects those fish and that movement of the shad and the bass to the backs of those creeks. So, this time of the year, that's where I'm going. I'm going to those flats, the backs of those pockets, the backs of those creeks. And, I also think there's another part to that. The best oxygen, especially where I live and further south, is in shallow water come the end of August, 1st of September. Things get so hot, the lake turns over. That best oxygen is within the first foot, 2 foot of the surface, no matter what the water clarity is. And those fish are going to be found shallower than a lot of people realize, even though the water temperature hadn't started to fall. So for me, it's going to be back to those creeks, back to those pockets, and it's going to be up shallow. Long-winded answer. I'm sorry, but
Oh, no. I like answers like that. What are some of your like key baits that you use to start finding these fish in the late summer, early fall?
Watercolor's going to dictate that, but if I can get away with a spinner bait, a square bill, my favorite flipping bait, a pit boss, a square bull, Berkeley version, that new Fritz side, your favorite spinner bait, a buzz bait. Those are going to be things that I'm going to have tied on. And I'm a firm believer in the wrong bait in the right place will catch them. So I tie on baits I have confidence in. They're keying on shad in the fall. Yeah, they'll probably eat bluegill. They'll probably eat crawdads. But in my mind, they key on shad in the fall more than they do on anything else. I have shad-colored baits tied on. I'm going to put the 4, 5, 6 baits on that I got the most confidence in and fish them till I find them.
Right on. Josh, did you have anything that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I got, when it comes down to size and all that and the bait fish, during that time of the year, do you think it's important when it comes to bait size? Let's say your square bills, or let's say your spinner baits, for instance, with your blades and matching the hatch and all that. Do you think it's important on your size, like if you should have that blade the same size as what your shad are? A lot of people will do that.
It definitely can be important, but there's also times when I've seen a lot of little bitty shad, and then I'll throw the biggest spinnerbait I got with a number 7 willow leaf will actually trigger some really big bites or a lot more bites. So I got to tell my son good night. Good night, buddy. Since this whole house debacle here, we're living in a camper, so we're under tight quarters. But no, it can be. I would try both.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that's always, in the spring that's big because, you got your gizzard shads and all that's up there. And a lot of people throw big swim baits and all that. And as the year goes on, you're always trying to match a hatch is what they say. And I was just curious if that was a big deal because, you're kind of coming out of that summer bite to the fall bite. So you still got that transition where people still throw big worms, still throw big baits trying to catch those fish. I don't know if that made much of a difference at all, but...
It can. It definitely can. I think probably the mistake that I make most in this time of the year is those fish really suspend. And they're going to be up in that top 2-3 foot, even if it's out over deeper water. So I just make the mistake of fishing beneath them or below them a lot this time of year.
Yeah, I got you. Chris, we got any questions or anything that's come in through for Edwin right now?
No, nothing coming in yet.
I think everybody's just listening.
Yeah, everybody's taking it all in.
Taking it all in, taking notes. Casey, you got anything for him for me?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay, I got one more question for you, and he's talking about your housing debacle there. How do you mentally keep yourself together when you going through such a and man, you went through a lot this year, with everything. How do you kind of keep all that together and still perform well on the water?
I got a good wife. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I noticed, when we go to the Classic, me and James down at the Classic and do the interviews with you guys in the back, it's something I've always admired about you is you always got one of your boys or a family member with you, back there and walking around doing the interviews. And you're very family oriented. And I just think that's really awesome that you kind of keep that going with, how big the sport is, and keeping your family a part of it.
They're the most important. I couldn't have done the year without them. Just my wife and her side of the family. They kept everything together. And I was actually driving home from one of the events, a day or, way early, before the event was over, trying to come help. And they insisted I turn around and keep fishing. And if it hadn't been for that, probably wouldn't be having this interview. I probably wouldn't have finished with the Angler of the Year, trophy.
Yeah. Well, Edwin, I don't want to keep you much longer, bud. I know it's getting late. And I know you're a busy man, and I just really appreciate you coming on, and just want to tell you congratulations again on your success this year.
Thanks so much for having me on, guys. It's great, and I really thank you a bunch.
Thank you, buddy. You have a good one. All right, guys. Well, if you really want to tune in into all, if you you watched all the live footage and you want to tune in for more footage of it, on October 5th, they'll be starting to air the Bass Pro Tour on the Discovery Channel. They'll be starting at 7 a.m., going to 9 a.m. So you got a good 2-hour span of just nothing but fishing. So, but I think it's pretty cool they're doing it on Discovery Channel. So most people have most of your cable packaging. You have Discovery Channel, and I think it's going to be great for them to reach out to more people.
Yeah, it'll be showing up in a lot of living rooms, and I think a lot of people will start watching it. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like it, but man, I've really enjoyed it. I really do like it.
Yeah, I mean, you it's so mixed right now. I think a lot of it is so many people are hardcore bass, so many people are hardcore FLW, that I think it pissed a lot of people off. When these guys pulled out, but it's like Edwin even said, where he was at, he was kind of burnt out. And you could see it when you went to some of the classics, how these guys were. I think it was frustration about a lot of things, and and I don't know what the story is with bass and all that, and what it all was, but I think the sport it was getting kind of stagnant in the pro series of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a big change from the way things have been done since it started, but like I said, I really enjoy watching it. So
yeah. But guys, if you want to follow along with more of the Bass Pro Tour, Major League Fishing, make sure you go follow them on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and then you go to MajorLeagueFishing.com. They got all kinds of apparel on there you can order, and they also got. I go in there quite often. They do a lot of tips now with a lot of the pros and videos and all that. So make sure you go on MajorLeagueFishing.com and check them out, and they have more the 2020 schedule coming up. They should be having to schedule up for that soon. So make sure you go check them out.